Alright, so what's up you guys, it's your boy Danchou, and for today I'm talking about the story behind the characters of Granblue once more, and this time we are discussing a character that has found his way into the spotlight with his recent entrance in GBVS, which will be Anre aka Uno. Now when I do these videos, my main goal is to inform those who got aware of these characters throughout Granblue Fantasy Versus, or just are poking their noses in the world of Granblue and found their way here on accident, or maybe by searching the character of interest. I myself have been playing Granblue for quite a while now, and over time I've developed a serious passion for the game and IP as a whole. It's my favorite out there as is, and being able to share the information about these characters and the world of Granblue with others to perhaps spark that same excitement as I have for it as a whole is something that I love to do. This video particularly has even more meaning to me, as the video already was in the works, but it was only recently that the English voice actor of Uno himself, which will be Bill Millsap, tweeted out one of my videos, and that was something very cool to me, as I'd never imagined my videos reaching out to the very voice actors themselves. He told me that this video got shared by the casting director herself, which would be Samantha, and that definitely motivated me to get the video out there even sooner than planned. So needless to say, if somehow Bill or Samantha does see this video, thank you so much for the support, as this is definitely a unique experience I won't be forgetting anytime soon. And I know this was a lot of talking, but it had to be said, so with everything now out the way, let's get into the video. Now first things first, who is Uno aka Anre? I'd like to clear up the very first piece of information, and that is about the name of Anre, otherwise known as Uno. You might have noticed that people tend to use either of the two names, and that is not without reasoning, as Anre's name in Japanese is Uno, which is both Spanish and Italian for one, whilst the English translation has settled for the name of Anre. In this case, I will be using the name of Uno from here on out because that's what I'm familiar with, but do note that neither of the names are incorrect, so it all just comes down to preference. And with the name discussed, we can take a look into his personality more, as Uno himself is a character with a background story one might not immediately suspect. Uno is not only a member, but also the founder and co-commander of the group that is known all across the blue skies. This crew is the most powerful crew under the skies, with no one to rival them, and they are called the Eternals. And as the founder of this group, he takes a role upon himself with the ideals of trying to control and balance all conflicts that occur in the world, by possessing absolute power that no one could dare to match or challenge. Other than his work as an Eternal, Uno also found himself in the background of trading as a merchant, which is similar to Zero Kartik, which is the most well-known merchant in Granblue Fantasy. Whilst he doesn't particularly sell anything anymore, he and Zero Kartik for sure have some stories to tell together. The merchant background comes from his family ties, as his dad was once upon a time one of the biggest merchants around. He is the one that taught Zero everything about the art of trading. Naturally, this meant that Uno also got involved in the business as well, and ever since he has grown a strong talent for the art of being a merchant. Furthermore, Uno's age is unknown to us, but it's strongly suggested that he does have quite a few years under his belt by now. Besides all the hard work he does, he also has hobbies of his own, which would include trading, but also includes grooming his facial hair. He likes peaceful times more than anything, and is also very fond of animals. And whilst his position as the Eternal might make it sound contradicting, Uno himself does not like altercations nor combat at all. However, his strong desire for peace is also what makes him eligible to fight for his desires and grow as strong as he needs to be to conquer those who try to cause trouble under the blue skies. And now that we know what type of person Uno is, we can now take a look in how the crew ever got to meet him. One day, Lyria and the gang returned to Zero to work on the awakening of the One Wrist Spear. When arriving at the shop, they meet this Harvin. When the Harvin takes his leave, Zero mentions that he is a fellow trader, and the crew didn't really bother to look into it more than that at the time, thinking that he was just a regular visitor to the shop. But after some time passes, the crew successfully unlocks some of the One Wrist Spear's hidden power, and when the crew visits Zero again to try and awaken even more of the weapon's power, someone is already there, which will be the mysterious Harvin from before. After they got talking, he reveals that his name is Uno, one of the Eternals, and he couldn't help but notice that what the crew has been up to with the One Wrist Spear, as this spear isn't your casual spear, it's actually one of the Revenant weapons. He changes his voice to a very serious tone, and he warns them that they'll have to deal with the Eternals if they do decide to awaken the One Wrist Spear completely. But the crew didn't really understand what Uno was actually aiming at. With a stern look on his face, he leaves before even being able to answer any of the questions that the crew might have had. These two interactions would lead the crew to meet someone they would never ever thought about crossing their paths in their adventures. And you might ask yourself, who exactly are these Eternals and why are they such a big deal? The Eternals, aka juutenshu in Japanese, are a crew of extremely powerful skyfarers that are known in the Skydoms as the group that consists out of only the strongest amongst the strongest. The group consists out of a total of 10 members who specialize in one weapon and their respective class. Their presence alone is there to prevent war, conflict, and injustice altogether. Each member is often on their own, doing their own thing, which you might not expect from a group with the infamous status that they have across the skies. But one thing in particular is important to take a closer look at, and that is the weapons every Eternal specializes in, and these weapons are called the Revenant weapons. The Revenant weapons are a group of super weapons that date back all the way to the days of war. All the Revenant weapons possess an immense power which comes at the cost of slowly but steadily consuming the minds of those who wield these weapons, as these weapons continually push forward with every little disregard of the wielder's mental health. This is a very hefty task that can't just be fulfilled by everyone under the sky. Only those who are strong enough can deal with the power and the destructive behavior of the weapons, and those who can't deal with this will fall completely under the power of the weapons themselves, meaning that those who intended to once wield the power of the weapon got wielded by the weapon instead. Now that we know more about the Eternals as a whole and the weapons that they possess, we can look more into Uno's role as an Eternal and his reasoning behind not only being part of this group but also being the founder of the group altogether. Uno himself has always believed that all one needs to end conflict is absolute power. His ideology behind this is that once people realize that they would have to deal with an unbeatable force of power, they wouldn't dare to start conflict against it, knowing that there will be no chance of winning or survival to act on their plans. Unfortunately for Uno, his ideology is based on his tragic background, which fueled the fire behind this very reasoning. Uno came from a family that was quite wealthy. His dad being one of the pioneer merchants set them in a great position as a family, but with such a status also comes danger. To protect their wealth, the family had plenty of guards around their house, all who were known as elite members of their profession, but one day trouble came to the doorstep as robbers tried to break into the house of the family, which resulted in a scuffle between the robbers and the guards that were there to defend the family's home. During the scuffle, stray bullets were shot, and those exact stray bullets ended up hitting both Uno's mother and father, resulting in the loss of both his parents in a matter of minutes of conflict at a very young age. At this point, Uno started to question a lot about power and why people do what they do, even if it seems unreasonable or impossible to them. At that very evening, Uno asked the robbers why they would ever break into their home, knowing very well that this could have been a likely outcome of attempting the robbery. He noticed that the robbers really didn't care about their numbers or the expertise of their guards, which made Uno question their reasonings even more as it was such an unbalanced fight. The robbers accepted their defeat and decided to answer Uno's questions faithfully. They told him that if they could rob a mansion like this, there'd be nothing else for them to be fearing, and that exact answer made Uno spend incredible amounts of time just thinking about how he could attempt to find a way to prevent similar tragedies, as no one deserved such things happening to them. After lots of reflecting on what the robbers told him, he came to ask himself questions like, what if my house had been protected by someone even more powerful than the guards? Or what if there had been a crew of unrivaled power that punished these evildoers? He thought to himself that with a force like that in the world, surely those robbers would have never even attempted to invade his home, and that line of reasoning is what led him to establish the Eternals, to finally have the force within the skies which power is absolute, which he believes is the answer to all. But his ideology gets challenged once more, as one day he has to face the fact that absolute power is not the answer to everything. The idea of the absolute power he has tried to obtain not being the answer to all the problems he is trying to face is a very hard concept for him to accept, as he doesn't understand how absolute power couldn't rule over everything. But this answer will become very clear in a short amount of time as the crew manages to fully awaken the power of the One Rift Spear. They try to show it off to Uno to celebrate their accomplishments together, but Uno coldly mentions that he is more than aware of the incredible power that the Revenant weapon holds. He tells the crew in a very cold tone that it's most unfortunate that they had decided to step into the world of the Eternals and their conquest of being the strongest in the skies whilst protecting everything and anyone that needs them. He tells the captain to step outside and to make sure that they bring the Revenant weapon with them. The crew is confused as they aren't sure what Uno is aiming at in this conversation, but they don't get much time to think as he tells them that now that they have awakened the Revenant weapon, their power is considered a threat to all of the sky. It's an absolute power that the Revenant weapon holds that can put an end to unnecessary conflicts altogether, but if such power were to clash, it will bring ruin to the world. He tells them that two sources with the power of this magnitude cannot be allowed to coexist, meaning that he wouldn't accept the power force of the crew and the power force of the Eternals to exist besides each other. The 10 Eternals together make up for the one and only absolute power that the world can withstand, and now with the crew wielding the power of the Revenant weapon, they would throw the world off its balance, and as an Eternal, Uno couldn't accept that. He decides to clash with the crew in a fight to put a statement on which power is the true menace that rules over the skies. He tells them that he won't hold back and will hit them with everything that he's got, but this fight didn't go as planned as the crew manages to defeat Uno with the newfound power of the Revenant weapon on their side. And as the battle goes on, Lyria just continually asks both sides to end the fight between each other, but Uno tells her that she doesn't have to fear anything anymore as he knows his own limitations well. He ends up saying that he accepts his defeat, but mentions that he didn't think his time as part of the Eternals would end so soon. Uno says that the captain should replace him as an Eternal, as the loss is unforgivable to the almighty Eternals. But as surprising as it may sound, the captain and the crew turns this once in a lifetime offer down, as they tell Uno that they are on an adventure of their own and by no means have plans to go off course of this journey anytime soon. Now with Uno tasting the bitter taste of defeat and the captain declining the position as the first Eternal, he's at loss of what to do. But to find middle ground, Lyria argues that when they will be working together, they'll be even stronger than before. This is a turning point for Uno, as he comes to realize that the power behind the captain wasn't in the weapon, rather that the power came from standing tall as a crew, supporting each other through every battle that they might walk into. Uno stands perplexed, and out of curiosity, he ends up being somewhat convinced by their logic, and thus Uno remains part of the Eternals, but also decides to join the crew. This very moment would change the ideals and thought process of Uno forever, as his ideals change little by little as he continues taking steps to a brighter future alongside the crew. But after a certain period of time passing, Uno finds himself troubled. He suspects that his ideals were wrong all this time, and he decides to dedicate his life to finding out the truth. And part of this truth is that realizing that power comes in more than one ways, and to realize this, he found himself to retake the steps he has once taken by challenging the captain and the crew to a fight. By clashing in a heartfelt battle, he gets to understand the power that fuels those who rival him in strength, and who is more suited to give Uno a heartfelt battle that asks every piece of power from him than his own group. He ends up visiting all the Eternals across the skies, and all of them are more than aware of his intentions the moment he arrives at their doorstep, and they give him the fight that he's longed for ever since he realizes that his ideals might have been flawed after all. After each fight, he gets to realize that every member of the group he thought was based and centered around absolute power have separated powers with not a single shared trait amongst each other. Every power of each Eternal who has reached the plateau of being the strongest amongst the skies have been founded on different reasonings and intentions, and only when these strengths combine as a group, they become the absolute power he has always been searching for. This is the most valuable life lesson that he would learn, changing Uno and his ideals for good. Now that is as far as the story of Uno goes, and in this video I prioritize explaining the main story and personality behind him, as that is the most crucial part to knowing about the character itself. Now I do plan on covering all the characters that are currently part of the GBVS roster or get added to keep this series going. So if you guys have any character in mind that you would like me to prioritize or cover, then feel free to let me know in the comments down below who you'd like to know more about and why. As to me, it's quite interesting to read up on how certain characters were able to pull the interest of my viewers. But for now, I will prioritize characters that are part of GBVS, as for most people in the West, GBVS is the first time they've ever heard of Granblue and its characters. So on that note, I will end today's video here, and I hope you guys enjoyed the story of Uno. So that was it for today, guys. It was your boy Danchou. Stay healthy, stay blessed, and I'm out. Peace.